Hey guys, we're often told, and I think sometimes it's a scare tactic that the secularists are coming. The secularists are coming, right? The Darwin's disciples are ripping our kids from their Christian faith, and secularization is on the rise. At least that's what I've kind of heard out and about in the culture. There's an understanding that perhaps there's been a shift happening. More and more people are becoming non-religious. Rise of the nuns, so to say. At least this is what's being told by to me when I survey popular media outlets or social media. But the question is it true? And if so, if it is true, is secularism becoming more prevalent? Why? So this is what I want to look at today on this episode of To the Point, where we dissect culturally relevant events and topics from a distinctly Christian worldview. And I want you to remember at the onset, if you're watching and you have questions, I'd love to address some of those questions after maybe a 10 or 15 minute commentary. So make sure you put those questions right there in the comments section, which you want to open up right now. And I'd love to survey those after I get done kind of exploring this issue. I just got my hands on the most recent copy of the American Worldview Inventory put out by George Bonner and the folks at Arizona Christian University. And that study, it's really interesting. And I highly recommend you going online. You can purchase a copy of it for Kindle or hard copy. I brought both just so I have them no matter how I go. I can read on my phone or whatnot. What's interesting is that worldview inventory points out that there have been some radical changes in the American culture and in the West in general that have transformed how we live life, and there's been a massive increased use of technology, a more passive populace in regards to governmental authority due to the coronavirus and things like that, or at least not due to the coronavirus, but we've noticed that because of Corona, our willingness maybe to submit more or be passive to the government authority. There's also been the almost total acceptance of gender and sexual orientation revolutions. There's been an increased access to entertainment on demand. I mean, we all have it in our living rooms. No longer are we purchasing our DVDs. Remember those? Or before that, VHS? Yes, I remember VHS. My first job was at a video store. And I remember DVDs coming out and me thinking, this is never going to catch on. We're going to have to replace all of these cassette tapes. Well, now everything's just digital. And then even that entertainment that's at our fingertips oftentimes is anything but edifying. We've also seen an increase of political activism for better or for worse. We've seen that social issues are intensified, and these changes have been made possible by the shifting of worldviews. But it's more complicated than than just the culture becoming more secular. On this To the Point, on every To the Point, I hope we seek to talk a lot about and wrestle with important issues, and where you stand on each and every one of these issues has to do with your worldview. A worldview is a lens through which you see everything around you. We make sense of the world all around us according to our worldview. Most of us would agree that until recently, the Christian worldview was the prevailing view. Most people would have identified themselves as Christian or at minimum religiously affiliated. But the research done by the American Worldview Inventory out of Arizona Christian University is shedding light on what's happening behind the scenes of these worldviews and behind the scenes of these worldview shifts. And it's really interesting stuff. Currently, according to the team at ACU, Arizona Christian University, listen to this, guys, only 6% of Americans hold to what's been classically understood as a biblical worldview. And this is this is a much smaller number than I would have thought, but I have to say it's not all that surprising. What does surprise me is why. What does surprise me is what we see in the other 94% of Americans. What worldview do they have? This is surprising because it's not secularism. And I'm going to make the argument that the world, and the Western world, and America in particular, we're not becoming less religious. In fact, the decline of the Christian worldview has little to do with an increase of any of the major worldviews traditionally studied, including secularism that we see in secular humanism, including postmodernism, Eastern mysticism, Marxism's a major, nihilism, my personal favorite, moralistic therapeutic deism. And I'm not going to be able to get into the specifics of each one of these worldviews today. Maybe in a future episode, I can explain what each one of these are. But it's important to understand that the decline, or the 6% number of folks holding to a Christian worldview, isn't due to an increase in one of these other major worldviews. And in actuality, the country isn't really becoming less religious or more secular at all. At an underwhelming 6%, Christian theism is still the majority worldview, followed by secular humanism with 2%. And then running up in third, each with 1% of the population, is moralistic therapeutic deism, postmodernism, and nihilism. They're all tied with 1%. So what's the big worldview winner? Almost 9 out of 10 adults in the United States, it's 88% according to the folks at ACU, have adopted what's known as synchronism. And some of you guys know what synchronism is, but for you who don't, synchronism's the blending of worldviews to formulate an entirely new and individual one. You see, it's the newest worldview in the scene, and it amounts to, honestly, a little more than self-worship. That's why I say it's not secularism. It's a religion, but it's more than a religion. It's a highly individualized mishmash, hodgepodge of ideas simply combined into what is usually it's usually an inconsistent and oftentimes contains contradiction. So it's contradictory and a mess of a worldview. Barna says, and I love Barna on this stuff, he says, synchronism reflects the superficial thinking and feelings-based decision-making that prevails in our cut and paste society. I love that quote. And it's my conviction, based on my reading, not just in this book by Barna, but in general from the articles I've been reading recently. Albert Mohler last week spoke about an article, I think, in the New York Times. It's been my conviction that this is all a result of relativism, which I talked about a few weeks ago, and back on To the Point, in relation to the redefining of the word female in an online dictionary. It's, I think, 2 or 3 To the Points ago. You can go and watch that. But worldviews are made up of beliefs, and it's possible for people to adopt some beliefs reflected in a specific worldview, but not enough to be classified according to that worldview. What do I mean by that? Good question. An example. You could believe that Jesus taught us to love our neighbor and adopt that ethic, a distinctly Christian ethic, right? That ethic alone, though, does not make you a Christian. However, that ethic has influenced the way maybe that somebody lives and sees the world. But at the same time, that same person could adopt the idea, for example, that everything that exists arose from or is a product of a purely naturalistic process. That belief alone doesn't make you a secular humanist. So the person who adopts those two beliefs, right, love your neighbor and everything is from a naturalistic process, they aren't Christian or humanist because of those beliefs. Instead, they've picked two aspects of two different worldviews and combined them into one. This is synchronism. The latest American Worldview Inventory data shows that 39% of American adults turn to moralistic therapeutic deism, for example, to influence their lives on a day-to-day basis, even though moralistic therapeutic deism is only represented by 1% of the population. This is really important to understand, because as we take it a step further, it might be, and this is why I bring this up, it might be that while Christian theism as a worldview is represented among adults in the U.S. More often as 6%, not 1% or 2%, moralistic therapeutic deism might very well be more influential. Do you get that? Let's run through some. Okay, so 16%. The study says that 16% of Americans say they're sympathetic to or adopt certain aspects of, for example, postmodernism, even though postmodernism only accounts for 1% of the population. The same can be said of secularism. So even though you only have a small, teeny fraction of the population adhering to one specific worldview, they're allowing other worldviews or that worldview to influence the way they think. So now you have people creating a hodgepodge of worldviews, trying to combine these things together and live it out. So they're not adhering to one overarching worldview. This is a major shift in how people see the world around them. And what this means is far more people allow their beliefs and their actions to be influenced and shaped by a cornucopia of worldviews instead of adhering to a single full-orbed worldview. This is synchronism, and this is the most popular worldview now. This is so that's what it is. The larger question is why? Why have people seemingly abandoned and adopted one of these, or abandoned adopting one of these more comprehensive worldviews that we used to see? Well, one reason is Americans, and I'm going to get tough here, guys. I'm sorry, I'm going to get tough, but one reason is that Americans are no longer taught about worldviews. This means that most people develop their own worldview according to their lived experiences, rather than being intentionally taught what to believe and why they believe it. And let's be honest, friends, most schools, even Christian schools, maybe especially Christian schools and parents, are no longer addressing worldview issues on worldview levels. We've come to view reality, as Francis Schaeffer prophetically pointed out in the 70s and 80s, that we're viewing reality now in bits and pieces, instead of as a system of ideas governed by a cohesive, overarching worldview. And I agree with Bonner's assessment in the book. American Christians have been asleep at the wheel, and this is why the culture is in the shape that it's in. And I want to end in my time with this. A couple more minutes here. I want to end this portion of this to the point with this. After reading the most recent American worldview inventory, I've come to a few conclusions. First, Americans are no less religious than they were 10, 20, or even 100 years ago. In fact, I think you have to go back as far as 100 years ago to see a time in our nation's history where we lived out what even approaches a biblical worldview, or even approaches, or we see in a biblical worldview adopted by most Americans. And the more I look into that specific aspect of this, I doubt even that. Americans, excuse me, we worship at the altar of pragmatism oftentimes, the altar of self, whatever brings the individual the most happiness, and there are consequences. Some of them we're seeing now, we're in the middle of, some we haven't seen. A second, and this is just what I'm drawing from this study. Don't hate me, the messenger. You can read the study yourself. Americans aren't as, and this is what Barna argues, and I think it's spot on. It hurts. When I read it, I went, ouch. But I think it's spot on. Americans aren't as intellectually sophisticated as we might want to think. You see, we've abandoned critical thinking and logic in pursuit of our feelings. We've largely exchanged truth for emotions. And this shouldn't be a surprise to us, though. And here comes some good news, right? This has been the pursuit of man since man was created. This is Romans 1, friends, being lived out before our very eyes. We're oftentimes more content to pursue a life of defined by comfort and convenience, rather than one of wisdom and righteousness. But from a biblical perspective, I want you to notice something. Even here, as we see people, as we see the influences of the biblical worldview waning, even here we see the biblical worldview being shown to be true. From a biblical perspective, the true and right perspective, we're not without hope even now, though, too. You see, while we should know that this is happening, we can tell that this is happening because this is part of our story. But there's a solution, right? While many have wandered off the path of maybe like righteousness and truth and wisdom that comes to the biblical worldview, there is a way back. It's the path laid out by the gospel of Christ. So with this in mind, my third and my final point to the point is this. This is a very human story, and we find ourselves in the middle of it. We're all either currently or have been wayward at one point or another, buying the lies of the culture. But eventually, by the grace of God, if you're a Christian, you've been brought back to the truth of who you are, who God is, and what's been done for us. It takes time, and it takes a dedication of people who are willing to stand firm in the grace of God and fight for right thinking. And that's what we do here, I think, at Stand to Reason. That's our part of our project, and that's what we do here at To the Point. And that's what I love about my job, is that I want to stand firm, but it's not a short fight. This is a long haul. We're in it. This is a marathon. Paul was very clear on that. But we do this with in the back of our mind. We step into the fight, we step into the fray, we stand firm, knowing that none of us has ever been or ever will be perfect to this side of glory. We all fall short of the glory of God. We're all works in progress, which is why we can lead in the conversation from a place of experience, right? Contending for the truth of the true story of reality, contending for the Christian worldview from a place of story, which is so influential in the culture today. But we know the true story. You see, the Bible tells us that we're to test all things, holding fast to that which is true. The Bible rightly tells us that we're to demolish every argument brought up against God, right? We're to be doing this. And that's what we're doing here at Stand the Reason. That's what we do it To the Point. So regardless of the worldview landscape and the shift into synchronism, we can stand firm into the truth of who we are according to the true story of reality. And we have reality on our side. Keep that in mind. The world has been made a certain way. God does exist, and he created us in his image. And when we see those fixtures of reality, we either go in line with them or we bump into them. And we can use those bumps as great launching places to conversations when people see that their synchronism isn't necessarily even working, because there are going to be points of contention. When those points of contention come, we can point them out and point them to the true story of reality. So that's a worldview update from the newest research out of Arizona Christian University and George Barnard. They're doing great work. Now, I'd love to turn my attention to your questions and comments, which I'm going to look down for a little bit here. And let's see how it goes. I thank you guys so much, first of all, for tuning in. Roger, man, thanks for that. Let's make some noise, everybody. So I played sports growing up, and this was the thing. Let's make some noise. Hopefully not a clanging gong or a clanging gong or a noisy cymbal, right? Hopefully I'm led by the Spirit of Christ. Good morning from Australia. Oh, it's so good to see you. You are literally in the future. That's so cool. So good morning. It's great to see you. Thanks for tuning in again. I really do appreciate you. You are always here, Howard, always. All right, let's see here. Christianity. I don't have a ton of comments, so maybe I can just go through them. I'm going to have to end a little bit early today, guys. I'm actually due in Orange County in less than 4 hours for reality stuff, which is, and after this, absolutely Christianity is disappearing. It could be. I couldn't be any happier. And John's happy that the Christian influences are waning in our culture. I'd like to know more about that, John. Like, what aspects of Christianity disappearing in the culture are you happy about? Are there any that maybe might concern you that seem like a distinctly Christian ethic that doesn't work on any other type of worldview? I don't know. That'd be interesting. It seems to me, as the Christian influences wane, certain things increase, right? Nature abhors a vacuum. That worldview vacuum is filled by something. And is that something better than what the Christian worldview offers? So thanks for tuning in, though, John. I appreciate it. New Reformation apologetics here. Rather than Christianity disappearing, I see it as a shedding light on those who are genuinely in Christ. Well, I think absolutely. And also our theology, we're going to have to show our hands here a little bit too, right? I'm generally an optimist, and I don't see worldwide, certainly, I don't think I see a waning of the Christian worldview. I see an increase, a drastic increase. It's just that we don't experience it here, and that we do. But when you look at places like China or the global South, or and you see even Cuba and Iran and the Middle East, we are seeing, I think, a rise in Christianity, and that's a good thing. But yes, I agree with what you're saying here. New Reformation apologetics a little bit. That certainly during a time when we're being pushed, when people are pressing in the Christian worldview and it's starting to kind of disperse, we are going to see there's a winnowing that happens. I think that we saw that during COVID. I think that's a good point. Thanks for tuning in again, as always. Let's see here. I I have mixed feelings about the decline of Christianity insofar as Christianity might be a bulwark against something worse. Richard Dawkins. That's a really good quote. There is a fantastic article, and it's going to be hard to find. Every time I need to find it, I excuse me, I search it. I search for it through Gospel Coalition, their website. And it's an atheist who writes, I think, in New York Times. I can't remember off the top of my mind. I have it on my computer somewhere. And he argues, if he visited Africa, and he's a secular humanist. I mean, he's a naturalist, and he argues that after seeing what's happening in Africa and the work that the Christians do, and he argues that that Africa needs Christians. So he sees the benefit of the Christian worldview, but he just doesn't believe in its truth. But this is also kind of what's in this article's years and years old now, but this is kind of what we were talking about today, where the culture is becoming more synchronistic. We think that we can live the ethic, love your neighbor, and forget where that ethic comes from, right? You can't get rid of the source of the ethic and expect the ethic to continue to hold true. We can try, but you're gonna dip into relativism real fast if you don't have that objective standard. Why treat your neighbor as you want to be treated? What if I want to be treated poorly? Stuff like that. So, but this is a great quote. I didn't know he quoted that, Howard. Thanks for sharing that, man. Let's see here. The dominant worldview is naturalism in the U.S. Yeah, that's not what Barna says. That's what I would have thought the same thing. So I wouldn't have thought it was naturalism, to be honest with you, because I don't know very many naturalists. I really don't. Maybe I'm stuck in my Christian bubble. I hope I'm not stuck in my Christian bubble, but I might be. I don't know a ton of I don't know a ton of people that when you say, hey, here's the definition of naturalism, do you ascribe to this? I really do agree with what Barna and then those folks are saying. And there's been a number of articles written about this recently. Harmony's out ill. You guys can be praying for Harmony, by the way. She's our social media coordinator. She's just out ill today, so she's not able to moderate and put all these awesome links up to these things that I'm talking about. She's fantastic. But what we're seeing is this idea that we can just start picking and choosing these parts of worldviews and combine them into our own individualistic worldview, and it doesn't work. And I think that we're seeing the results of that. There's contradictions, and one of those contradictions such that you can say we love our neighbor, but when we get rid of God and we get rid of the objective standard giver, we get rid of any objective standards. So, anyways, but I would have agreed with your New Reformation apologetics, the dominant worldview, I think. But what I would say is that many people have become synchronistic with naturalism. There are certain areas of worldviews, even Christians have adopted certain aspects of naturalism and tried to fit it into their Christian system. And in the process, certain aspects of naturalism, by the way, disqualify you from being Christian, or at least adhering to a Christian worldview. But good, I like the point here. Question, let's see here. Emily, thanks for tuning in. How do they define biblical worldview? That's a great question. Let me, you know what? I might be able to just pull it up really, really quickly here on my computer, because it was the most recent, book that I, oh man, it's going to run super slow. It's open. Let's see if I can find it really quickly for you. But I'd recommend reading, let's see here. Everyone with the worldview, blah, blah, blah. 3. I'm not gonna be able to find it off the top of here, how they defined it. They're going to, I think that they're going to define it as people who affirm, of course, certain aspects of the Christian tradition, held not Orthodox like Greek Orthodox, but held classically held. So they would uphold the centrals, like they would say the Jesus is God, the Bible is the Word of God. I would say that they're probably going to include something about inerrancy in there, as far as it's authoritative. How about that? The Bible's authoritative. This is just stuff off the top of my mind I think I remember reading. So these are going to be the key. God exists. How I live my life should adhere to the standards of God, as opposed to any other standard out there. And those are the things that distinguish us, the Christian worldview, from one of these other worldviews. So yeah, I'm not able to find it really quickly, but purchase the study. It's really great. And they do answer that, Emily. A great question. And thanks for tuning in as always. Let's see here. Let's see. New Reformation apologetics. I've been calling this phenomenon Hegel's hand grenade. That's a I mean, if you guys don't know Hegel or the Hegelian dialectic, look into it. It's a really interesting point that you bring up here in New Reformation apologetics. I appreciate this comment quite a bit. Yeah, it's like this trial and error with worldview systems that's happening. It's really interesting. Good point. Bikash, not by a long shot. If it's disappearing in mainstream media or in particular religion, it is thriving and flourishing elsewhere every day. Bikash, you are ahead of me on a comment I just made. Absolutely. I think oftentimes we get myopic, right? We look at our current situation. I live in Southern California, so I tend to look at Southern California and allow that to inform how I respond and what issues are important and all this stuff. But keep in mind also, it's really interesting, like when we start to correlate the worldview stuff with the increase and changes that have come with the shifting in worldviews, like the increased use of technology and how it's being used. We are now at a point in time where we get instant news coverage on stuff, and that has results, and that has that there's practical consequences to that in our lives, right? Because oftentimes when we read a news story, how many times all the time you read a news story, well, the news organization, whether it be CNN or Fox or whatever news outlet you choose, it's going to post a story because they want to break the story. And it seems to me like the facts of the story are becoming less significant than actually breaking the story. So they're willing to break a story, even though it hasn't been completely corroborated, or it's only been corroborated to a certain point. And that changes how we view things, right? And but at the same time, it makes the world smaller, at least in appearance. It's because we think we have all of this technology at our fingertips, and we get all of this news from all over the world now right away. I mean, you have RSS feeds, you have the TikTok, Twitter, whatever it is. I don't use like any of those things. So I don't know really how they necessarily work. Twitter, I'm on every once in a while. Facebook, I'm on less and less. But we have this appearance of becoming a tighter knit community, or maybe not a tighter knit, but more cohesive or more knowledgeable about each other. But we're more together, but are we more together? It's that saying. There's a book out there called Alone Together that makes this point. But Bikash, thank you for tuning in. Number one. Number two, I totally agree. I think that we need to step back and look at things, look at what God's doing around the globe, and we'll be very, very encouraged, in my opinion. I think so. Let's see here. Howard, I heard that there are more Christians in China than America, and Jesus is appearing to people in dreams in Iran and other Muslim nations. So the apostasy seems mostly in the West. Yeah. Well, yes, I think you're right. There's websites. There's a website that I forget off the top of my mind what it is it's video. It's a pretty good production quality too. Video testimonies of these Muslims who are having visions and dreams of Jesus. And leaving their worldview, and there's like huge consequences to that. So it's not just like, oh, I had a bad dream and I'm going to change my life. It's like there's huge ramifications. Like you can never go home again. Like coming out and saying to your wife and your kids, we have to leave our home and we need to leave it forever. And not know what's out there, because I've come to the realization that Jesus is who he says he is. Like there's major consequences in that cultural context, which is also maybe why we see these rises, right? More Christians in China. I don't know what the statistics are off the top of my mind, but I've heard the similar things. It seems to me like when there's more of these types of consequences, it seems like the faith really, the Christian worldview really kind of explodes. And here in the West, we're very comfortable. And that's why synchronism, that's one of the reasons I gave. We're in pursuit of comfort as opposed to righteousness. So, and I'm guilty of it in certain aspects of my life. I think that it's important to lead with honesty. But yeah, great point here. Daryl, let's see what Daryl has to say here. Oh, Darlene, sorry, Darlene. I don't think Christianity will ever disappear, but it will continue to lose popularity. As someone who was a Christian for over 4 decades, I began to instruct in 2 years ago. Darlene, I would love to hear more about your story. Maybe now is not the right time or this format, but I'd love to hear the reasons for your deconstruction. I'd love to hear what it is that you're leaving, and then also what it is that you're leaving too. I'd like to know more about that, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. Well, I know Christianity is not going to go away completely. I know the end of the story, but I certainly think it'll lose popularity. But remember, guys, popularity doesn't tell us what's true, right? Just because an idea or something is popular doesn't mean it's true. So, and that's what we should be chasing after, is truth in all things. So, Darlene, I'm sure that you're allowing truth to lead your journey here. I'd love to know more about it, because I lived a lot of my life the opposite, right? I lived as a naturalist, and then I became a Christian, and not because Jesus appeared to me or anything. It was because largely two. One, my lived experiences out in the world. I started realizing the world was a certain way, and my naturalism didn't align with it. Also, intellectually, I really looked into the claims of Christianity. I dug deep into the solutions that they offer for some of the problems of man, specifically the problem of evil. And I realized that my coup de grace, so to speak, my argument, my fiercest argument against the existence of God, actually didn't do anything to solve the problem that I raised. And it got rid of one of the possible solutions, but didn't do anything to solve the problem. I got rid of God, but like I still had evil and pain and suffering and stuff. So, anyways, these are some of the things that I bumped into as an atheist that my naturalism couldn't explain. Where did it all come from? Introspection and uh, uh, the consciousness that we seem to be aware of every waking moment of every single day. What is that? So anyways, I hope you're wrestling well. There's some great resources, by the way, if you're in line, Darlene, and this is for everybody. If you guys are able to get to realityapologetics.com, that's our reality conference, student apologetics conference website. And it's open to more than just students. Feel free to go sign up. We're in 6 locations this year, all across the country. Late next month, is our first one we follow the school calendar. And so it's in September. It's going to be in Orange County. Then we go up in September, October. We go to Seattle. In November, we're going to be in Minneapolis. December, January, I think we take off. February is Dallas, Texas. And then we go up to Augusta, Georgia. And then we go up to finalize and finish in the spring in Philadelphia, or outside of Philadelphia. But we're talking about deconstruction as a topic. Like that's the topic that's guiding the whole conference. So Darlene and everybody else here, I encourage you guys to attend. Anyways, okay, let's see here. Oh yeah, Roger, you're going to be at the conferences. Hey, make sure, Roger, would you make sure, please come and say hi? I'd love to meet you face to face. Like that's one of the brilliant things, one of the amazing things, one of the wonderful things about the reality conferences is the speakers are very accessible. It's not some conferences I go to, and I'm not like, I know what I'm a speaker, right? I travel all over the world talking to people and giving talks, and sometimes I'm exhausted, and sometimes it's hard, and sometimes you just want to kind of gather your thoughts. But one of the things I love about the Reality Apologetics Conference is that the speakers are just out there. We don't like hide in the green rooms, and you can come and meet us, and then I can meet you, and I can talk to you and ask you some questions. You can get to know me. It'd be really great. So anyways, Roger, make sure you say hi if you come. Yeah, you are literally in the future. Yes, it's Thursday morning here. See, I told you. You're in the future. Unbelievable. John, you say I don't like the term Christian. I prefer fulfilled Jew. Yeah, I mean Christian. I mean it's the given term to it. I think it's a biblical term, and it's a good way to distinguish, because for the reason that you use the word fulfilled Jew, uh, Christianity and Judaism are not the same thing. So it's popular. It's not pop. I'm not saying it's popular, therefore it's true. I'm saying that the popular understanding is you. When I say I'm a Christian, most of the time you know what I'm talking about. Let's see here. Let's see if I can get a question. I've got like maybe 5 more minutes here. Let's see. I want to see if there's any like specific questions. I'm going to scroll through. Darlene, you're interacting a ton. I love to see it. I think this one's really interesting by you, Darlene. I've briefly, I don't have time to like read every single one, so I'm going to kind of go down towards the bottom. But the claims that Bible believers make are unsustainable. That is why the Christian religion comes down to faith. One has to believe with little or no evidence. I couldn't disagree with you more, Darlene, respectfully. I think that you and I are operating on a different definition of faith. Faith in the biblical understanding of faith is evidence is central. It's not blind. It's not this blind leap into something. That's not the way I operate. I don't believe anything on blind faith. Faith is based on evidence of things not seen. Sometimes, yes, it's Hebrews, right? But there's a lot that goes on that we don't see. I mean, a lot. Quarks and even molecular. In the molecular world, there's things that we don't see, and we have to rely on other evidences to come to believe that those things are actually happening. So I'm wondering if your standard here is applied on top of everything else that you believe. Two, I don't know what claims that the Bible believers make that are unsustainable. I think that some people who believe in the Bible make unsustainable claims. But I think we all do too, to a certain extent, just like there's hypocrites in every worldview. But I think that most of the claims that make all of the claims, I'm going to say all of the claims that I'm aware of that make Christianity, that make somebody a Christian, that are central to the Christian worldview, I think are sustainable. I'd really love to have a conversation with you, Darlene. If you live in one of those areas, you should reach out, and maybe we could grab a cup of coffee while I'm in town in one of those areas, or you could just come to the conference. You don't need you can just come and not pay, and come and meet me. And I mean, you won't be able to get into the talks and stuff, but I'd love to have a chat with you, and I'd love to know more about what you mean by some of this stuff. It's really interesting. But I appreciate you coming on and having this, like, kind of entering in this dialogue. I'm sure that there's people here in this. Yeah, I don't know. There's some people who are going to be nice. Like there's a comment here that one of you guys, oh man, it just left. But okay, here's a specific end, and this is where I'm going to end. I have to end. So the time is getting away from me. The only evidence for the resurrection is in the scriptures. Not true. One has to have faith to believe in the resurrection because there's no objective evidence. Well, no, there is. What do you mean by objective evidence? And what the first part of your claim is not. It's just not true. There are extra biblical sources that claim to the events that have led to people believing in the resurrection. I'm not saying that there's you don't have Tacitus saying Jesus Christ was raised and he's Lord. No, but you do have Tacitus and Josephus and these extra biblical sources who are arguing for these events. For example, they're arguing for the life and ministry of Jesus, right? They're arguing that he was crucified. They're also arguing and saying that his crucifixion, and some of them are saying that there's, because of the supposed beliefs of his core central people, these Christians, where he gets his namesake, is what one of them says, they transform their lives, and that's how Christianity started. So you're having testimony of not just ancient writers, that corroborate the story, but you have internal corroborations, you have external corroborations, biblical corroborations, extra biblical corroborations. You got extra biblical corroborations from history and from archaeology, for example, corroborating that the biblical narrative is trustworthy and historical lens. So I think that I think, well, I think demonstrably false. The only evidence for the resurrection is in the scriptures. I think is demonstrably false. When I make the case for the resurrection, I don't rely only on the gospels. I don't rely only on the New Testament. I don't rely only on what's in the Bible. Actually, I think some of the most important, I think some of the most important evidence is found in the Bible. But even so, why is that disqualifying? Why would all we see it is in evidence for the resurrection in these 66 books, separate documents? Why does that disqualify them from being valid anyway? Because they corroborate each other. And it's not just one source. These are eyewitness source anyways. So I again, I'd love to meet with you and talk it through. And I'm sure people will chat as the day goes on. But Darlene, I do appreciate you coming on and paying attention and spending some time with me. Time is valuable, guys. It is one of the commodities. It's more valuable than money, in my opinion. It's one of the few commodities that we have in our life that once it's spent, it's never coming back. Once that second, once that minute, once that hour goes by, you never get it back again. So anytime that you guys spend some time with me, I'm so appreciative. Whether we agree or disagree, I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy that you're engaging me. So I do appreciate it. So with that, guys, I have to get going. I'm going to get on the road. If you're a praying person, I would love prayers. We're starting to ramp up for realityapologetics.com. That's our Reality Apologetics website, our conference website. So Reality Student Apologetics conference is coming up, and we are going full swing. And we could use prayers, and I could use your prayers. I'm speaking on suicide again all around the country, and it's a tough topic. If you would like me to come out and speak on the resurrection, or speak on suicide, or problem of evil, or justice is my newest talk I just put together, and I really enjoy the talk. If you want a biblical justice, pushing kind of back at the narrative that's coming from CRT and these things, I'd love to come to your church. I'd love to come to a conference. You can get in touch with us at str.org. If you and bring me out, I'd love to. I go wherever I'm invited, so I'd love to meet you someplace and speak for you, or at a conference. Also, keep your eye open for new STR University courses. They're launched at str.org/training. str.org, if you want to know anything more about what we've talked about today, or Darlene, I'm sure you've been over there, but if you want to find out more information, a little bit more in depth of what we believe and why we believe it, not just what we believe, but why we believe it, why I think I've written a bunch on the resurrection. And actually, I've done a whole STRU course on the reliability of the Gospels in particular. It's totally free. You don't even need to pay anything. We just want to get these resources, and I'd love to know what you think. So with that, guys, thank you so much. You guys, Eric Hernandez is always good. Has a great video on, So anyways, I just saw Eric's name pop up. Eric's a beast. He's great. So he's a friend of STR for sure. He's often at the reality conferences, not necessarily speaking, but he always represents his project. So anyways, love you guys. I thank you for your attention. I thank you for being here, and I hope to see you on the next To The Point. I'm John Noyes for Stand to Reason. Have a great day. I'll